In any RPG game, you are given a character to serve as a proxy through which you get to act yourself out in the game. Whether the RPG game is about a known character or one you built from scratch, in nearly all RPG games, you start off as a fragile, weak piece of shit that gets wrecked at the slightest challenge.
Oh! How is that fair? How is that fair?
But through some kind of disease of the human mind, we somehow find pleasure in the process of getting that weak, sniveling character of ours into a state where we actually can face the hardest challenges, NPCs, bosses of the game on equal footing. We find that process so exhilarating that we get addicted to this shit. We can spend hours a day doing only that repeatedly, watching that bar of experience painfully slowly nudge up. But we don't really start to ask ourselves, why? Why is that so enjoyable? Why do we get so gripped by 2D screen images? Why does our brain get tricked to the embarrassing extent that it does? And the answer is, RPG games tap into the most primal and meaningful human story. The hero archetype. RPGs make us think we are the tarnished, compelled to cross lands between, fight demigods and become the Elden Lord. Or we're the Dragonborn, warrior with the body of a mortal and the soul of a dragon, destined to fight and defeat the great dragon Alduin. In short, RPG games mimic the feeling of living in an archetypal hero story. The associated part of our brain, of our neurochemistry, gets hijacked by this gaming framework, leading us to act as if the game character is actually us. You see, it's sleek wizardry, slimy sorcery, purely designed by nerdy eyesight-lacking coders for the sole purpose of tricking that dumb brain of ours. And it works, doesn't it? But why am I telling you all this? Am I trying to make a case against video games? Am I sponsored by Touching Grass?
Have you been spending a shameful amount of time in a dimly lit room looking at a screen? Have you lost the ability to talk to a person without feeling like you want to get back to your room as fast as your weak, flimsy lungs can handle? Try Touching Grass. With Touching Grass, you can reconnect with your forgotten human instincts in a week's time. You'll be able to take a walk or look at things further than 2 feet away and have a conscious thought. That's right, with Touching Grass you no longer need to scroll endlessly and drown in meaningless noise that makes you a ball of existential angst. Try Touching Grass. Now available 100 feet away from your immediate location wherever you are. Despite whatever that was, I'm not really here to get you to stop gaming. What I'm trying to do is to get you to see something that should seem obvious to us but we don't recognize, which can be best transmitted through a question, which is, why aren't you engaged in life the same way you do your favorite roleplay video game? Why don't you act out your hero arc in real life? Why don't you act with the same enthusiasm, intensity, grit? Why don't we play as if our life was on the line? Because it is. Our life is literally on the line. All of us will die and we only get one shot at this thing.
It would seem self-evident that taking the video game approach to life would be the best way to be as a person. To not take things personally and to get systematically better in all areas you lack in. To become the person you want to be. To reach the most ideal version of yourself. To embody every single aspect you value and desire within your body and mind. I mean, how sick would that be, and how isn't that all we ever try to do? Evidently, there must be some kind of hurdle there. And actually, there's two. Evidently, dying in real life carries a tiny bit more weight than in-game, but that's only a small part of it. Fear isn't only present when you face an unmistakably dangerous situation. In reality, fear is the most persistent human emotion, present in our every step, in our every decision. Because you see, fear is about potential danger much more than actual danger. You might not think it, but it is very much a deep-seated part of us. Perhaps even the deepest. Our core drive, after all, is survival, making us hyper-aware of anything potentially threatening to us. We cannot help but sense danger very consistently throughout our day. You might think that you're choosing to not tell the barber that the haircut they gave you makes you look like a rotten mushroom.
I look like a pencil.
I look like a pencil.
I look like a pencil.
But deep down, there's this deep-seated feeling that you cannot explain that's preventing you from telling them the truth. The truth about you looking like a fucking rotten mushroom, of course. The law of the jungle dictates us that we comply with fear. Had your ancestors not been fearful, you wouldn't be sitting here at this moment. But let's take a little step back. We are now living in the 21st century, in societies mostly governed by laws, where you could actually get reported to the police because you made too much noise and it bothered your neighbor. Because we all know you can't just be out here making your neighbor's ears feel a little uncomfy. That's a very big no-no. Say what you want, but if we look at most of the world today and compare it to nearly every single tribe throughout human history, the relative safety we currently have is absurd. The Mongols aren't knocking at your door anytime soon, and dragons haven't been seen for the better part of 500 years. You and I will most likely die of old age. So then, why does fear play a role in our inability to play our hero arc? Since all evidence seems to point at how safe we actually are. And the answer is, we're dumb, paranoid little freaks that cannot help but find very creative ways to torture ourselves. So, how do we deal with that? We'll get to that in a second, but you and I must agree on something first. The highly acclaimed psychiatrist Elisabeth Kubler-Ross and the person behind the 5 stages of grief, just so as we make it clear she's actually legit, is quoted as saying that there are essentially only 2 human emotions: love and fear. According to her observations made through decades of work, all other emotions stem from these 2. This is important to know for us because what might be preventing us from taking action might not be a very obvious manifestation of fear. Being the complex apes that we are, we might feel a plethora of emotions, sensations that might prevent us from taking actionable steps in the process of positively enhancing our lives. So, from this point forward, I will address any emotion that might prevent us from taking action as stemming from fear. Now, let's dive into it. Think of it this way. You're a character in a video game, and as such, you cannot really take things personally. In Skyrim, for example, if you go against the Frost Dragon from the start, you're gonna get screwed up in 3 seconds. But you don't just stand there blaming and cursing your character for being a weak piece of trash because he's incapable of beating the dragon. Instead, you take on missions, you level up your stats, your skills, you learn to forge weapons, armor, and you keep on doing so until you level up and get to a point where you can actually face the dragon. You might even use potions amidst the battle, and it wouldn't really affect your ego that much. This completely contrasts with how we act in our lives. We get stuck in ruts of emotional ruminants. We blame ourselves. We beat ourselves up because of our failures, of our shortcomings, of our behavior. We are so terrified of not being good enough, of not being worthy, of not being capable, that we do not even try. The thought of failure paralyzes us, keeping us ironically in the worst possible place. The place where our growth is stunted, where we cannot overcome. The antidote, while seemingly complex, is actually quite easy to apply. This is gonna be the most important part of all this video, so if you're gonna remember something of all this, please let it be this thing. You cannot take your emotional responses to things personally. They are only ever signals to your attention and not things to use to judge yourself with. Whatever negative emotions you might feel, they are only signaling you towards potential areas of improvement, so that you can get to a point where that emotional reaction is no longer needed, so that you could have better life experiences, so that you are better protected, better cared for. Your emotional responses to things are only ever manifestations of self-love, disguised as sometimes harsh judgments. It is the deepest parts of you talking to you in the only language available to them. They are trying to tell you what you might need, what might help you, shield you, guide you, empower you, and you should only ever perceive them as such. This is perhaps one of the most liberating and freeing beliefs one could possibly embody, or in my opinion, it is very much so. Exposure therapy is basically skill farming emotions, and for our greatest luck, is an extremely effective tool in dealing with fear. But what is it really? Exposure therapy is basically used in therapy sessions to deal with phobias ranging from mild to very severe. For example, and for some unknown reason you have a paralyzing fear of elevators. The therapist would guide you through exposure therapy sessions starting very small, like a picture of an elevator, and as your fear tolerance increases, you would slowly build up to the real thing. The end goal being, of course, that you would take the elevator like any other regular person, which would most likely happen if you truly commit to the process, since exposure therapy is extremely effective in dealing with fears. Now, the way we can use that to our advantage is by applying the same principles in our lives. Let's put it this way. If something has always elicited fear in you and you think that fear is preventing you from reaching your desired goals, or is making you have a worse life experience, then you have to face that fear until you get to the point where you make it irrelevant. And again, we know for a fact that exposure therapy works. So if you commit to this principle, you will get there at some point or another. Side note, I think it's extremely inspiring that exposure therapy is actually the most effective tool in dealing with fears, as it clearly demonstrates that the power to overcome it is largely in our control. So I think I kind of made a pretty good case for why committing to this thing is kind of worth it. In my estimation, it's basically like dropping a self-growth nuclear bomb on yourself. We'll talk about fear in social settings mostly here, both to keep it as simple as possible and because it's by far the most important aspect of fear, or at least the aspect of fear that prevents us from leveling up our character the most. What I'm saying is that if you're able to fully commit to the social games with the goal of leveling up your stats, it's by far the most transformative thing you could possibly embark on. Fear in social settings takes many different forms. Fear of confrontation, fear of rejection, of embarrassment, of failure, or God forbid some kind of combination of all in one setting. It all has to do with the perception others have of you, which in turn translates into the perception you have of yourself, which is actually quite healthy and normal. We're extremely social creatures. Like it or not, our sense of identity and well-being is unseverably tied to others. Luckily, it is not only true for you and me. The same game is played by all people all the time, everywhere. It's the basis for our societies, economies, relationships, nations, our world. We're also consciously playing the game at all times, which is why it makes it by far the most important game, the game with the highest potential, or to make it more simple, the most rewarding skill to farm. How to farm social skills? Just randomly and very regularly start conversations with strangers. I'm not joking. You don't have to make it weird, just kind of copy the people that kind of already do it. I mean, you know, wherever you are, there's always that person that's talking to the nearest stranger to them. You kind of think of them as aliens, but I'm kind of asking you to become one. And for the love of God, if you're a dude, it doesn't have to be a girl. Conversation is not a skill specific to romance. It's something you cultivate by being open to the world, by having a fun, light approach to others. By being so, you naturally gain the ability to better deal and approach others, which translates in reality into exponentially more economic and romantic opportunities, and a shitload more fun and memorable experiences. Now, think of every other way you could apply the same principle to get your character to the end goal you'd like. Think of negative emotions keeping you stuck or unable to take the appropriate steps towards that goal. Then find a way to apply the principles behind exposure therapy and not taking things personally in a similar manner to it. If you truly apply that, there's an unreasonable amount of chance you will get there at some point or another. Fear often prevents us from taking action. It works fervently and diligently to keep us in our zone of comfort, to prevent us from taking steps beyond what we know. It's the warm but firm hand on our shoulder, keeping us warm but stuck in place. But once you become conscious of its presence, of its effects, of its nature, of how to deal with it, then it loses near all its strength. By using both principles, you are more than well equipped to deal with any hurdles or negative emotions that may arise while you try to get to the end goal you lack. Expending energy is painful. Waking up early is hard. Going to the gym can be a hassle. Reaching out to our friends and nurturing our relationships is no easy task. And so, our reaction in the daily requirements voluntary effort makes of us is more times than not avoidance. We refrain from taking on more pain than our sense of comfort permits. We lay in our bed, scrolling on our phone. We sign up for the gym but only end up going a few times. We neglect our relationships and let distance and apathy sever our ties to others over time. We take life as easily as we can get away with. We avoid hardship anytime that is an option, forgetting in the process a grueling, harrowing truth. Pain cannot be avoided. It can only ever be delayed, pushed off to a future version of ourselves, of our future. The blow we refuse to swallow in the moment with time takes a far uglier, more insidious shape. The shape of an unsightly disease, eating away at our potential, decaying our will, numbing our mind, slowly rotting our soul. This reality, the reality of so many, can easily sow the seed of despair within us. We know the choice is ours, but we feel the ability to enact it being so far out of our reach. So, how do we deal with this bleak reality? Don't worry, I'm not gonna pull off a Goggins here.
You're just a bitch.
Instead, let's take a more pragmatic, realistic approach. You see, action might be painful, but this truth is accompanied with a few very positive set of rules that kind of balance it out. I believe that how we should deal with taking action mostly has to do with building habits and systems that make it as easy to do as possible. The belief that you could possibly force yourself into doing things over an extended period of time is, I believe, not only toxic but kind of impossible. You will either burn out or revert to your initial habits very fast. Our body, our mind, our subconscious, they all exert tremendous control over us. They have a life of their own, and you won't silence them into submission by force. And so, when you act out your will in the world, consider all parts of you and how you can kind of satisfy each while doing what you want. Try to build your life in such a way that doing what you need to embody the hero arc is not a battle of will, but the easier choice. For example, when choosing where to live, and if you don't have a car, Consider how far the closest gym is so that you won't have to walk a long distance. If you want a diet, make sure to buy only the things that would help you achieve the results you want. That way, you remove not just the temptation, but the possibility of stuffing yourself with those Smith Milano chocolate cookies. You should set up your life in a way so that you do not need to exert willpower to do what you need. If the gym is a 2-minute walk and there's no derivative of crack cocaine in edible form in your fridge, then best believe you'll be far more likely to stick to your initial plan. What I'm trying to say very politely to you is, we're animals. We might have convinced ourselves we've outgrown our hairy, tree-hopping, tick-eating phase, but we have not really. We are barely sentient, and we should take this reality first and foremost into account when crafting our plans. If a monkey opens a fridge and he sees a cake and a salad, he's gonna stuff that dumb mouth of his with cake until he feels like throwing up. In contrast, we have some amount of willpower on the daily that makes us able to resist such things. But we run out of willpower pretty fast, and so it is not something we should entirely rely on when reaching for our goals. And so I believe setting our life in a way where we have as little interaction with that monkey part of our brain as possible is the most helpful thing we could possibly do when it comes to reaching our most ideal version of us. The pain is, for the most part, in our own imagination. The act of imagining yourself doing the task, and the inner struggle that ensues between the two opposing sides of you, the one that argues for doing the task and the one that argues for rest, that is where near all the pain lays. The resulting feeling from that is a kind of tiredness and sluggishness, but that is very far removed from an extremely important fact. Our bodies are unfathomably strong. If you're in your 20s or 30s, that is even more true. We can handle far more than we think, and you probably have some proof of that yourself. If you've done a marathon and got yourself to the point of absolute exhaustion, for example, but somehow you find yourself able to finish the marathon or run for far longer than you thought yourself able to when you got to that point. Or if you've done a sleepless night for either a work or uni thing and were able to keep yourself focused and on task for so many hours, our bodies in times of crisis prove to be insanely more durable and capable than we think they are. And so, it is more than a fair statement to say that the pain is most likely happening in your mind. This is somewhat of a lesser point than the previous or upcoming one, but remains important nonetheless. The way you most easily deal with this is by reducing the time between consideration and action. The longer you consider what you need to do, the more likely you will be able to argue your way out of doing it. The solution is in doing and avoiding consideration at all if possible. The pain you endure doing what will get you to a higher, stronger version of yourself will paradoxically weaken that pain or the hold it has over you over time. Not only that, but for every single skill you decide to form, it carries a snowball effect that will positively enhance a lot of other aspects of your life. For example, let us say that now your character has 50 energy points, and you decide to spend 10 energy points on a daily to go to the gym. At first, since it's your fifth of your energy points, it will kind of be hard to pull off on the daily. But over time, as you do it over and over, and as it becomes a habit, it will start to cost you less energy points, let's say around 2 points. And so, for only 2 energy points, you'll be able to get a physique buff. Not only that, but you level up in overall health, well-being, confidence, attraction, strength. You will wake up feeling more energized. You will reduce brain fog, be able to focus for longer periods of time, have clearer thoughts. Not only that, but you will end up unlocking other skills. If you get serious about going to the gym, then you will inevitably watch how you eat and be careful about getting more sleep time. both of which will be carrying their own sets of character enhancements. I use the gym to put the concept into perspective, but make no mistake, exercise is paramount. Never mind what I've just listed. Just Google positive long-term benefits of exercise. The most important point here is that any form of regular exercise will increase the amount of energy you have. And as we've discussed, energy is the most crucial element of the game. It is the difference between reaching the desired future version of yourself and not. My advice is to pick the most enjoyable type of sports you can think of, or at least the least painful. For example, I do weightlifting because I enjoy lifting heavy things and growing my strength. And just as much, or even perhaps a little more, I like slowly carving out the body of a demigod out of myself. Simply put, I kind of enjoy it. Doesn't make it easy to do on the regular though. Just pick anything that can give you a similar kind of satisfaction. Some people enjoy martial arts or running more, for example. The goal is to expend the same amount of energy on the daily while being able to do more things that will level up your character. This was the last tool in our list. And so, as of this moment, you pretty much have all the necessary tools to do anything you want. Or so I presume. Obviously, the biggest factor for anything to get done is you. And there's enough chance you already feel resistance just hearing that. But we've kind of predicted that already, didn't we? Is it laziness or fear that's coming up? Either way, you already have the tools in hand to deal with both. Start small. Pick up working out, or go do some groceries. But as in game, there are many paths and specialties you might choose to focus on in the process of trying to enact your hero arc. Whatever that may involve, these tools can be applied just the same as to it. By taking life head on, by showing up daily for yourself, by doing very small, scary, painful things very consistently over a very long period of time, you will grow exponentially stronger. You will be more eager and hungry for life. Your body will be more resilient to pain. By watching yourself grow into someone worthy of respect, of admiration, someone others can look up to and rely on, you will feel and embody what we call the human ideal. Alright, that's pretty much it, I think. If you've got to this point, thank you for watching for this long. I truly appreciate it. And that's pretty much it. See ya.